Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Venture Fuel Visionaries podcast. I'm your host, Fred Schonenberg. On today's show, we have Rachel Sheppard. Rachel is the Director of Ventures at Mars Petcare. She leads the Leap Venture Studio and Academy, which is a groundbreaking accelerator that invests in innovative pet care startups, offering funding and support to help them grow. She's also a champion for underrepresented founders, driving initiatives that have increased opportunities for women and people of color in the venture space. Before joining Mars, Rachel is instrumental in creating the Female Founder Initiative at the Founder Institute, and her work is all about fostering innovation and building inclusive ecosystems. Today, we're going to discuss the booming pet care industry, the unique approach of Leap Venture Studio, and Rachel's vision for the future of pet care. So please join me in welcoming Rachel Sheppard. Rachel, it's so nice to have you on the show.
Fred, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So let's start with this. This blew my mind the first time you and I ever spoke, but how big is the pet care industry overall?
It's bigger than some people think typically, but yeah, it is. 7 in 10 households have a pet in the US alone. And so that is a pretty substantial market size. And then according to, there's some different numbers based on the sources, but according to Bloomberg specifically, the pet industry measured $320 billion in 2023 and will grow to $500 billion by 2030.
So, I mean, of course, we all either are pet owners or know pet owners that are so passionate about the health, happiness, and wellness of their pets. The pets have really become, part of the family, if not more, at this point. So, talk to me a little bit about Leap, how it came to be, and what you all are hoping to achieve.
Yeah, happy to provide some history there. So you're so right. 97% of people say pets are part of their family. And so this is definitely something that drives our industry forward in a variety of different ways. But Leap got started. Leap is actually a partnership between Mars Petcare and Michelson Found Animals Foundation. And so it started back in 2018 when leaders from each organization sat next to each other at a conference and said, I think that pet care needs an accelerator program. I think there's a way we can formally support pet care startups in the future and help them get, ahead further, faster. And both leaders had the same idea at the same time. And so they actually were like, let's partner, let's collaborate and see if we can do this together rather than separately. And that is a partnership that is, 6 years running at this point. And so that's how Leap got started. We were the first pet care startup accelerator. And our goal as the two organizations, which is really kind of a beautiful structure to begin with, is having two organizations involved from the onset of how we structure our support for pet care startups. So I get a chance to co-lead the LEAP program alongside my colleague at Michelson Found Animals Foundation, Paige Ellen. And her and I work together to try to support pet care startups as much as we can in a variety of ways. And I can get into more of what our programs look like. But basically, having this partnership really allows us to support pet care startups in a holistic view of not just what one of our organizations is interested in, but what does greater pet care need? And because we're also partnering with a nonprofit and an animal welfare organization, we're thinking about the ecosystem beyond just consumers, and more so thinking about it also through the lens of our portfolio in vet, diagnostics, and then, of course, animal welfare overarching as well, and what impact can pet care startups have also.
I love that. So can you talk, and obviously that's a unique, the partnership there and the ability to look holistically, it's very unique. Are there other things that are unique about the program versus maybe some of the other corporate initiatives or corporate innovation initiatives that are out there?
Happy to share more about that. So 2 things that we have going, there's kind of 2 layers to Leap. There's Leap Venture Studio, which is our seed stage accelerator program. That is our flagship program. It runs for 12 weeks. It is now a hybrid program. It was in person and then it was virtual, and now we're hybrid. We've landed in a happy medium. Yeah. And then we also have Leap Venture Academy. Leap Venture Academy is some of our earlier stage programming that we have, where we do pitch competitions. We have fellowship programs that are a couple of days long, but are kind of an example of what the studio can provide in terms of value for a company. And we do a lot of that sort of opportunities. We design a lot of those programs specifically for founders of color and underrepresented founders, female founders. So we do as much as we can to both build up the ecosystem of pet and create more opportunities for diversity in pet care as well, and create more opportunities specifically for founders of color and female founders.
I love that. It's so interesting. We've been doing different versions of corporate innovation over the years with so many different clients. And one of the things that we found is very interesting is this sort of like, what is the early stage, like nascent idea stage, almost like open innovation, like there are just some ideas here that can create the future companies. And then there's like the accelerator piece. So I love that you have the academy. We do this for some folks where it's almost like that's the incubation period. Then you move into the more commercially ready, and then you move on from there. But I think it's so smart to have those different tiers to also help the founders become founders and figure out how to innovate within the space.
I agree. I like that we have 2 tiers also, because at the studio level, if you are accepted into the Leap Venture Studio program, we invest $200,000 US in your company. We do that in 6 to 8 companies a year. And so at that point, we're making a venture investment, right? And so what about everything that happens before that moment, right? In 6 to 8 companies a year in Petcare, we already talked about it. Petcare is growing like crazy. And so there's a lot of innovation happening, and that's a small segment of the industry. So how do we help more companies each year is part of what Leap Venture Academy does. And it's also about how do we help people prepare for venture scalability? How do we talk through even if venture scalability is something that's necessary for that business or a good fit? And it's just a variety of ways for us to be able to more tangibly help more companies each year, because there's just a great opportunity to do so. And we are looking globally at pet care startups. And so it's not just, I mentioned some specific stats early on that were US focused, but we really look around the world for pet care growth as well. And there's a lot of innovation happening.
How do you all get down to, obviously it's such a big industry, and you mentioned a couple of different large categories within that industry. How do you focus on the areas that you want to explore? Like, are there specific challenges maybe tied to your both businesses that become pillars that you sort of anchor off of, or how do you begin the search for what you're looking for?
It's a good question. I think there's things that we know are going to grow in the space, and those are categories we may be more familiar with from our own sort of corporate standpoints, for example, right? So veterinary diagnostics, nutrition, as well as services and animal welfare. But I think we sort of take those bigger ideas and we say, okay, well, what could be interesting from an innovation standpoint that falls into those categories? And then what is interesting that's outside of those categories? And I think that's kind of the best part about having these innovative venture programs built into corporates is, what are we not seeing? What are we not thinking about already that needs to happen in the future? Or what are some innovative things that are coming into the pet care industry because it has so many adjacencies across all other categories, fintech, therapeutics, diagnostics, like what kind of trends are we seeing? And so I would say we look for things that are strong businesses that we can invest in that are going to make a better world for pets and are going to have a solid impact on the future of pet care. How we find those, what categories they fit in, I think we kind of have some frameworks, and we hold those frameworks very lightly, where we're very open to, is something else going to come and sort of make a ton of sense and also get a lot of traction? And it wasn't a category or a specific type of innovation we could have seen coming.
I love that. Yeah, one of the things when we get asked about like, what's your superpower? And I'm always like, it's not going to sound like something that's very obvious, but like creative adjacency, this idea that there's really unique things happening that might not be in the lane that you've decided to run in. And so you have to be open to that serendipity, because that's where some of the magic comes from, is something that's working over here in a seemingly unrelated field, and you reimagine it back in the area that you play in, is often a really interesting way to kind of leapfrog and find something that's really special.
100%. And what I love about that too is when you find a team who is specifically like designed or positioned in order to do that, right? So like they have that exact expertise either from an adjacent category and they partner with someone in your category and they come together and say, okay, we're going to reimagine what this looks like because no one else has yet. And I think that's just awesome to see.
Yeah, I love that. So let me ask you this, like when you maybe using one of these sort of adjacent or nascent or unsuspected areas, you find something there, how do you maintain or drive the excitement back with the core of Mars? Obviously a very large, very successful company with lots of focus areas and things to do. One of the things we hear a lot on the show and then in our daily lives is some of the challenges of innovating outside of the mothership. So can you talk a little bit about how you maintain the momentum and how you work back with the core?
Yes. So one of the ways that we maintain momentum is we have been designed, and I think it kind of comes back to a little bit of the partnership. We've been designed to kind of be outside the business, not physically just or even structurally, but really like looking. We're always looking outside the business. And I think we've also created opportunities for us to be able to run at the speed that startups need a support system like us to run, because startups move so fast. I mean, things can change in a day, let alone a week, a month, a year, right? So things change so fast. We have to be able to be that malleable for them, and also that sort of responsive for them as well. And so I think a little bit of that goes back to our structure. The second piece I would say is we are very founder focused. We are sort of most of the people working on Leap, we have startup backgrounds. And so we come from the industry, outside the industry coming in. And so we are very familiar with what do you need to know in order to help us? What do you need to keep an eye on in order to really be helpful for startups in the future? And also, how can we be helpful as an industry? So pet care broadly, both on the Michelson side and the pet care side, Mars Pet Care side. How can we make it so that both of those organizations are helping startups without slowing them down? And I think it's a very hard thing to do, but like we found a structure. And I think the accelerator model kind of leans to that, where you have people come in as experts and provide information that they can provide and help people get past some of their milestones faster. And then leave them alone. And, sort of, I kind of phrase it as we get out of their way. We let them keep running at the speed that they're running at. And then when they're ready and they need more help, we're still here. In terms of getting excitement to the mothership, internally in the organization, I am very biased in this, but I think it's really easy for innovation to feel exciting. And so whenever you see something and you're like, people are doing what? I think it's just so fun and amazing. And we're lucky to be able to see a ton of that. And then it's a matter of, I think there's some people who are just naturally very innovative, and they tend to sort of, draw into our program very organically and say, hey, how can I help? How can I be of service to founders? And I think people who are very mutuality driven in terms of like, how can we find, betterment for pet care faster by partnering outside of ourselves? I think that is something that Mars is very good at cultivating. And we have a lot of associates internally who think and feel that way of all ships rise with the tide. And I think that makes it a lot easier for us to be able to get support for startups, and also, get excitement for their growth and their opportunities in the future.
I love that. So can you share a few successes that have come through the program?
Absolutely. I was thinking about this from a few different angles as well, because I was like, there's a few different ways we can measure success. One of them is, of course, follow-on capital. Our founders have raised over 200 million in follow-on capital, and some of the founders who have raised really great capital so far and are growing, and we're excited to be a part of that journey, are companies like Native Pet and Smalls. Also Shameless Pets, which is a great nutrition company that does upcycled ingredients for treats. We have also had 2 exits. So Lacuna Diagnostics was bought by Heska in 2021, and Pet Hospice was bought by us at Mars under the Blue Pearl banner in 2020. And then I was thinking about what are some other ways to measure success. And there were 2 different stories I kind of wanted to share. The other is that we invested in Hound through the studio program in 2022. And also in 2020, Relief Rover had participated in the Academy program. Last summer, Hound bought Relief Rover. So Hound is improving the way veterinary medicine operates from a culture perspective with software. So a great example of taking things we know can work and bringing them to an industry where people haven't done that yet. And then they bought Relief Rover, which was a relief veterinary platform. And now they're combining forces. And this is like, to me, this is a success story because we were fans of both of these companies and what they were building separately. And then they realized if they put it together, there could be a lot of added value. And that's what's happening in the industry. And it's a great win for customers of theirs, as well as the industry broadly. So that was another sort of success story I wanted to bring up as well. And then the last thing I want to mention is last year, we added an impact seat to the Leap Venture Studio program. And our first company was to be part of the impact seat is Bestie B&B. And Bestie, what they do is they have created a secure platform to help people in times of crisis get foster care for their pets. And so they are really supporting people who need crisis care. And that could be for people who are need to seek domestic violence shelters, unhoused shelters. They need to have cancer treatment. They have some sort of acute crisis that's happening in their lives, and they need to know that their pets are cared for. And Bestie has found a way to build that platform out and create that secure foster care for people. And they're actually saving lives. And so that is another really important success metric, obviously. And their best measurement of success is by far their impact in this world, which has been tremendous thus far. So that was another form of success I wanted to bring up.
Yeah, I love the different angles of how to look at success. I think the number one question I get asked is how should we measure the success of our accelerator or studio? What are the KPIs and things like that? And I think clearly impact, the seat you mentioned and that startup in particular is tremendous. We've heard follow-on funding as a metric, and I think you kind of gave the holy grail, which is from the corporate standpoint, right? Which is this idea of we ended up acquiring one of the companies that went through here is a pretty interesting thing to hang your hat on, right? You kind of spotted it early, helped it accelerate, and then it was so interesting that it became part of the organization. But there's a lot of different ways to measure what is successful, and it sounds like you guys are delivering on so many different aspects of that, which is special.
Thank you. And I do feel like a lot of that comes back to that idea of like, we have frameworks and we hold them lightly. Like there's an idea like, yes, we want to help founders be successful, but we're also open to that success looking like a different metric than we've previously thought of, right? Or measured by. And I think that helps us be what startups need at the best time. And also it allows us to be part of more startup journeys that are really changing the world and making a better world for pets, that is really the ultimate goal.
So I asked this question a fair amount on the show, and it's sort of like the future casting idea, which of course nobody has a crystal ball. But I'm curious from your seat, your perspective, what does the future of pet care look like? Is there something that would maybe surprise the audience as what this will look like down the road?
I don't know if there's any major surprises, but there's a few things that come to mind that aren't segment specific, but they're big themes that I think will play a role in what the near-term future of pet care looks like. And the first of which is senior pet parenthood. A lot of people adopted pets in 2020 and 2021. A lot of them were young. And so seniors, pets become seniors depending on how big they are. It could happen as early as 7 years old, or, it can happen at in those later years, and, anywhere between, 7, 10, 12, depending on the pet and the age of the pet and the breed. And so as a result, we're going to have a ton of senior pets, and that's going to kind of happen all at once. Not necessarily like all the pets will be senior, but it's going to be a big inflection point. And I'm wondering, are we prepared for that? Have we prepared pet parents for that as an industry? Are there more solutions we can be bringing to market? And this is more of a call directly to founders, but are there more solutions we can be bringing to market to better prepare people for senior pet parenthood, which is just a different phase. It's a really joyful phase and a really amazing phase. And seniors were some of my favorite patients when I worked in vet hospitals as an assistant many years ago. but I do think that it is something that we could use a lot of resources around, and that's something I think about a lot. Another area of pet care I think could be really thought about in terms of the future is accessibility of care. So we've had a lot of innovation push forward, sort of precision medicine and precision nutrition. And I think a lot of that's definitely still growing, and gold standard veterinary care. And at the same time, I think that we've also had some macro challenges in the last couple of years that have affected, and that's not pet care specific, but more generally across tech and the economy, that have affected how people can spend. And so I really like to talk about accessibility of care, of what is that full spectrum of making sure that the people who want to feel and have the joy of being a pet parent and can provide food, water, basic care, and shelter, and a home, obviously, and attention. If you can provide those basic things for a pet, how do we make that accessible for you? And make sure that, our industry has all the tiers necessary so that people can experience the joy that is pet parenthood.
Are there any startups or technologies, either in those areas or others, that have you very excited, that light you up? And I'll say this question, we do these innovators dinners all around the country throughout the year. And I always ask this question for everyone that comes to the dinner. I'm like, what startup or technology are you most excited about? And it always blows my mind because everyone has different things that get them excited. And so it's a very exciting space for our listeners too. So is there anything right now, whether a specific startup or technology that has you excited?
There's a few, I would say there's like two categories when I was thinking about this. The first of which is longevity. Longevity is a big part of the pet care space. We are lucky to have had longevity specialists and people who have this background in technology to bring it to the pet care space and say, how do we increase pet lifespan and make that lifespan incredibly healthy? And there's some great companies working on that, including Loyal for Dogs. And Loyal for Dogs is actually very close to my heart because I discovered that company right as I was feeling the need to come back to pet care as an industry. And so I'm just excited about their future in general. And I also think there's some great longevity companies elsewhere in the world as well. And we'll see this space continue to grow as we're watching it grow in human healthcare as well.
Yeah.
The other is just, I would kind of group this into listening tools of sorts. And that can be anything from diagnostics to hardware to other things to just help us better understand what our pets are feeling and experiencing. An example of that would be a company called Everfur, which is actually using fur samples to help people better understand what their pets are at risk for, what that health profile is, if there's anything they could be doing from a nutrition perspective to improve their pet's health. There are also lots of other diagnostics, like, for example, Innovative Pet Lab and Animal Biome, which are looking at GI health for pets and identifying what's going on internally and how we can improve that and really improve their overall health by helping them feel better. And I think it all just comes down to the fact that they can't tell us much, right? And so we have to really understand how to listen to them. And a lot of it we learn, and it's probably one of my favorite things about being a pet parent, is you establish a language over time where you know exactly what they're trying to tell you when they're trying to tell you something. But we really don't know how they feel all the time, day to day, and they can hide so much. And so especially for cats and also, of course, dogs, but cats can hide things really, really well. From a health perspective, how do we learn more about how they're feeling and about the nuance of the changes they're experiencing in their health so that we can come up with solutions and intervene faster at home to make their health span and lifespan even longer and help them live happy, healthy lives.
I love it. It's so interesting listening to you. It's like these are the same challenges and areas of excitement for human beings, right? So if you think of like an AARP, right, or age tech collaboratives and things like that, like how longevity, health, better lifestyle, how do we better understand how we're doing precision medicine? It's very interesting to see those worlds intersecting. So Rachel, I want to get you out of here on this. Where should people go, both founders and other folks that are interested in Leap and Mars Pet Care? Where would you like them to head?
I'd love for people to visit leapventurestudio.com. And if you're listening to this before September 15th, 2024, we'd also love to share with you that we have an application open for our next studio, cohort 9. So we're accepting applications. And if you're working on an early stage pet care company, would love to hear from you.
Amazing. We'll help get the word out. And thank you for your time today and for everything you're doing to spark such positive change.
Thank you, Fred. Thanks so much for having me.